for my second episode of Mathews Media, and today we'll be covering another education story. Today's topic is one that almost every current education story is on, particularly with the Trump administration's recent changes to the Department of Education. It is public, unified education systems versus privatized, localized, and individualized education systems. I spoke about doing this video in my last episode. Please go check it out if you can. The newsworthy event I mentioned and that we'll be leading with here is a ruling that just came in July from a Superior Court judge in Los Angeles. Judge Stephen Gorvich decided in favor of the California Charter School Association, calling LA Unified's decision to vehemently restrict the locations of charter schools unfair. The lawsuit originated from a policy created by LAUSD in 2024, which said district administrators should, quote, avoid co-locating charter schools and sharing campuses. And that word avoid ultimately lost the district the lawsuit. The decision affected nearly 350 charter schools and especially targeted schools like Black Student Achievement Plan campuses, which prioritize minority students' needs because of their school population. I wrote a few stories on BSAP and other marginalized programs, increase in funding for this upcoming school year, and the battle some unions and coalitions went through to get that funding. However, Prop 39, a state law, works against this policy and was the basis for the judge's decision. Gorvich wrote in his decision, Proposition 39 does not allow the district to categorically prioritize district schools over charter school facilities. However, as drafted, that is exactly what the policy instructs the district to do. As he alluded to, the idea behind the policy was to emphasize children and resources in district schools and ensure high priority students aren't deterred from attending them. So, simply put, charter schools and LAUSD schools are experiencing a turf war, and LA Unified felt they were at a disadvantage. After the policy was enacted, charter schools took the defensive, saying now they were significantly handicapped. Without those campuses, many of the charter schools couldn't operate. In 2024, the CCSA sued LA Unified over its policy. A year later, the judge finally ruled in their favor, but the war is likely to go on, with LAUSD expected to appeal. Although LA Unified stated that they don't want to blanket the entire district in that policy, they also said they want to avoid sharing with schools that would, quote, compromise a traditional school's capacity to enroll students from nearby neighborhoods. So ultimately, that type of broad language is why the CCSA felt the ruling was a huge victory. It's also why the judge made the ruling in the first place. The LAS reported that Judge Gorvich agreed that the district has latitude to decide that a co-location could harm student safety or jeopardize its ability to serve neighborhood children. But the district's greed for categorically directing charter schools away is what led to the decision. With that said, I spoke with an LA Unified spokesperson and he said, quote, we are very pleased with most aspects of the court's ruling, which denied all of CCSA's contentions aside from two lines in the policy. This is speaking to the word avoid and the broad implications of it. The spokesperson went on to say, CCSA significantly mischaracterizes the plain language of both the policy and last month's ruling. Now, how convenient that CCSA and LAUSD both agree with the ruling. It's because they have to, frankly. That's the beauty and great power of the judicial system. Their decision is final, at least until another judge looks at it. Whether or not they are indeed pleased with the ruling, it is true that the judge was on the fence for a long time and could rule in their favor in the future if they modify the policy. The reason the judge is on the fence or was on the fence is because of the arguments for schools with lower income households, minority students, or targeted schools for academic achievements. Those schools and locations, at least in the eyes of the district, need all resources focused on them, and they feel co-locations takes away from the students who need the attention the most. That opinion is supported by Joseph Williams, Executive Director for the nonprofit Students Deserve, and a partner with the Police-Free LAUSD Coalition. I spoke with him when I worked on the stories I mentioned earlier because his coalition was a major voice in increasing those BSAP funds, and Williams gives good insight into what students, especially underprivileged students, want from the district, so I usually talk to him about this type of stuff. He says he's concerned with the diluting resources. As much trouble as Students Deserve has had with getting LA Unified to agree to their demands, the district ultimately gets the choice of collectively making that decision. That's the benefit of universal education systems, and it's why a lot of minority groups support it. And I gotta say, it is very interesting watching Williams and his coalition agree with the district, because most stories that I've done in the past, they're butting heads, but it's sort of that the enemy of my enemy is my friend sort of thing. It would and will be a lot more work and frankly impossible to get charter schools on the same page, and that's the danger in both of their eyes of giving charter schools more power. This is the Los Angeles specific concern, but it speaks to a larger movement in American education. Charter schools are publicly funded, so they are different than private schools. However, the idea behind them is to tailor education and present individual ideas on how to run the school separate from a larger governing body. For the sake of this conversation, charter schools, private schools, any school choice argument are lumped into the same category. The argument for charter schools is the same purpose of Trump's decision to dismantle the Department of Education. The administration wants to return education systems to the state, local, and individualized communities. Now, it is a common misconception that the Department of Education operates schools and curricula. That responsibility has already belonged to the states for quite some time. But funding, loans, preventing discrimination, and enforcing civil rights laws all come from the federal level. Think of it like this. The states are kids that went off to college, and the federal government is their daddy. The states can do whatever they want, right? But if they break the law, go broke, or flunk out, just like that college student, then the feds or the dad will have to either take their money away or send more, depending on what the problem is. And that's why many states want more control over the bank account. It's a fiscal argument, if anything, like most things. The way many states get voters on board with this idea is by trickling down the decision to the parents. Every child has a set amount allocated to them, and parents want to feel in control of those dollars. My home state of Louisiana just created a bill last year that creates funds for families to send their children to the school they see fit. I wrote a few stories on the bill for the Senator Square. Go check it out if you can. It'll definitely inform you on this topic. The movement I often spoke about in my stories is called school choice, and at least 28 states have a version of a school choice program. Many of the school choice programs are created in favor of underprivileged high achievers, essentially paying for them to go to better schools. If you're a parent of a high achiever in a specific subject, it makes more sense to send them to a school that specializes in that subject. The teachers I spoke with for my story on school choice in Louisiana could relate to the Los Angeles district thousands of miles away. They too are extremely worried that school choice and charter schools will devastate the public school system. But the argument for this movement is simple. They want the individual to have more say in their education. Families and communities are fighting for more power over their children's schooling because they lack faith in the current system. Even more so than a lack of faith, though, there is a collective amnesia towards the reason the Department of Education was founded in the first place. The department was created to, quote, strengthen the federal commitment to ensuring equal educational opportunity for every individual. And that quote is from the Department of Education website. But the rise of charter schools shows something different. We don't feel that commitment anymore. Irene Kim is a friend of mine who spent the last year working for City Year. City Year is a nonprofit organization that hires young people aspiring to become teachers. The teachers in training, Irene as an example, fill in the gaps at schools in underprivileged neighborhoods, tutoring public school students so that none are left behind. The organization is primarily funded through AmeriCorps. AmeriCorps is one of the many federal agencies that saw significant cuts from the Trump administration. And those cuts directly affected my friend Irene. She was promised a stipend amount that was later taken away from her when her organization received news of the funding cuts. There was nothing they could do. This is along the lines of the arguments LA Unified and Williams are making. At the end of the day, anyone in politics or activism knows there are only so many funds to go around, especially with funding cuts taking place. So it's already affecting low-income areas at the federal funding level, as we see with Irene. Irene says a few of her colleagues quit in that moment. However, she and many others decided to stick it out to ensure the kids get the proper tutoring they felt they deserved, which was very admirable of them. But the students she served couldn't afford private school education. They were often considered low performers and came from underprivileged neighborhoods. Her school was a great example of the after effects of charter schools. Some of her students were sent to this school specifically because they were low performers. Charter schools have the privilege of prioritizing the high achievers, and public schools are forced to take on most of the struggling students, making their grades look bad. So of course, that creates a reputation that's hard to crack. Public schools are failing children. But with all the high performers getting sucked up and a lack of resources to begin with, public school failure or perceived failure was inevitable. This is another layer in the district's argument. If they're going to be taking on the biggest challenges, they deserve the most resources, and that includes locations. The lack of commitment towards the collective is sewn into our brains as Americans, right? The idea of charter schools or privatized education is based on individualism. Why should my smart kid have to go to school with your struggling kid? You know, it sounds like a mean question to ask, but it's a fair question for a lot of parents especially. It's an argument against indoctrination in many ways as well. Some parents may not agree with what the larger education system is teaching and would rather have a more conservative approach. But is that what's best for America? Let's take China as an example. It's no secret that China's students are outperforming US students in every single traditional academic metric. The US ideology puts them in a significant disadvantage. China's society and government can indoctrinate and teach its children much more strictly. It's fit in or get outlawed, plain and simple. And when it comes to teaching children, that's effective whether we like it or not. Our individualistic mindset pulls away from the collective, and it is a major reason why America is seen as falling behind. Of course, it's arguable whether or not China's system is actually better for the children. The panel argued that the lack of diversity in student activities is a major downside for China. They are almost solely focused on academics and test scores, which doesn't allow for much flexibility in thought, but providing more freedom in educational experiences is something public schools are still perfectly capable of doing, right? There is no limit to what public school, universal public schooling can offer if maximizing student potential is the sole priority. So why can't public schools work? Why does it always seem like a child is left behind? Those against charter schools say it's because the collective can't agree on a set structure and chooses to prioritize certain children. Having the same expectations for all and schooling all kids allows the overachieving kids to set a standard and the less fortunate kids to have access to the same resources. In my opinion, what some people who support privatized education or school choice programs may not realize is that by starting everyone on an even playing field, you're promoting meritocracy. Having a communist mindset with education allows our truly best performers to rise to the occasion. And the reason I really wanted to throw that word communism into it is because a lot of these types of arguments does boil down to that at its core, right? Communism versus capitalism in a lot of people's minds. If you ask just somebody on the street, that's what it means, especially if they haven't done a lot of research. It's either one or the other. And capitalism is thought as the one that supports meritocracy, but what I'm saying is education should be pulled away from that overall society mindset that capitalism has. Education is different. Think of it like a sport. Professional sports act in the purest definition of meritocracy. If you're better, you'll get more playing time, plain and simple. I mean, sure, there are a few coaches' sons out there benefiting from nepotism, but for the most part, getting playing time is almost primarily about what have you done for me lately on the field or on the court. In sports, everyone plays under the same rules. You have the same ball, the same field, same number of players. If a team wins, it's because they're better in that moment. It's not because of some historical advantage. Education is the regulation of the sport we call society. It sets the standard of play. Theoretically, it allows every person the ability to contribute their highest volume to the economy. There are still opportunities to earn and separate yourself in society based on hard work, but education sets the rules of engagement. Now that I've shared a little of my own thoughts, I do want to be clear, I don't support getting rid of charter and private schools altogether. I kind of ride the line on this issue more than probably any other topic I've covered. I've talked to a lot of people in favor of school choice, including Nathan Sanders, the Policy and Advocacy Director of EdChoice. He was a great guy. And Aaron Bindley, the Vice President of Policy and Strategy at the Pelican Institute in Louisiana. Bindley told me, and I think this quote is very interesting, it boils down to competition. Now they, meaning teachers and administrators at public schools, are going to have to work extra hard to earn the privilege to serve kids and families in their communities. So basically what she's saying is, and what a lot of these people's argument is saying, it's like in the workforce, how if you introduce competition, it makes everyone better, it makes everyone strive to be great, and it also makes you have to prioritize your workers, or your students in this case, because they'll just go somewhere else if they don't like what you have to offer. I understand why cutting down on bureaucracy, focusing on results, and raising expectations can be good for the education of students. And I also know flexibility, which school choice provides, is enticing for parents. How could it not be? This is at the root for the great argument and the great divide for everything in America. Individualism versus centralism. But like many things in America, I don't think the answer is as simple as supporting universal schooling or individualized schooling in totality. Right now, the country and Los Angeles are both moving in the opposite direction of central education. An article from EdSource says charter schools continue to grow in LA despite the scrutiny from a generally blue Democratic city. But it's not all one-sided in current education news. In another article from ACLU, I learned that the Supreme Court rejected the first religious public charter school, which is a huge win for generic universal education and for preventing indoctrination in the public school system. My hope is that one day we can strike a balance between providing equal opportunity and also rewarding the best and brightest. The unique thing is about this argument is both sides feel their way does just that. For now though, LAUSD is losing this fight. Charter schools and private schools are taking control, and the education disparity in the country's second largest district is only going to grow wider. Thank you for watching, guys, and I'll see you next time.